Hi, everyone. My name is Rochelle Levy. Thank you for joining. Just a few ground rules. This is going to be a very uncomfortable conversation. So the next 90 minutes is going to be very uncomfortable for you, but just make sure that you stay respectful and that you respect the opinions of everybody else. If you would like to submit a question, please utilize the Zoom chat that's at the bottom of your screen. Simply click chat and ask your question. I am the founder of the BLAC Project, and we have a wonderful panel of people who will introduce themselves as this event goes on. So what we will do is we will have a few people talk about their experiences and how to be an effective ally from different points of view. And then we will open up the floor to take questions and engage in, again, a respectful discussion. All right, introducing Aja, who is the co-founder of the BLAC Project.
Hi, everyone. Like Rochelle said, I'm Aja Gage. I'm the co-founder of the BLAC Project. Again, we just want to express so much gratitude for you being here. We understand it's been a very painful couple of weeks, but for most of us, for much of us, this has been our lives. And this is why this is so important to talk about, because although we have a lot of allies who are just joining us now who share in our fear, this is the fear that we feel walking out of our house every day. And it is important to recognize that and to realize that there are certain things that other people can do to help destabilize the system that constantly tries to put us in a box and constantly tries to just make us feel less than. So I appreciate you all for being here. And I really hope that this brings education, that this sheds a light for everyone on what they can do, and that you just get a lot out of this conversation. So thank you. And introducing Justine Mills.
Hey everyone, I am Justine Mills, known as Justine Alicia Mills. Just kidding, you call me Justine. I am a student at Iona College studying marriage and family therapy. I am Caribbean, Costa Rican, Antiguan. I'll be speaking from the relationship point of view in my previous relationship with a white man. So you'll hear a little bit about that. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me in the chat.
And next up, we have Sue.
All right, did you say Sue? I didn't.
I did, Sue. Go ahead and give your introduction.
Okay, my name is Sue. My husband's Black. I guess that's why I'm here. I work for a Black organization, the Union of Minority Neighborhoods. I'm the old person here on the panel, so I can speak to my generation of white people who were more arrogant than most because we saw ourselves as the heroes of the 1960s. But in general, what I saw were very patronizing, condescending people to the Black community, and that's continued to the day. The young people that I see, young white people that I see now in the protests seem to be listening more when they're told they have to take the lead from the Black protesters, and of course that's a good thing. And what I worry about is how much we have to fix and what happens once the protests stop. Will white people listen? Will white people do the hard work that we need to do to help change these racist laws and systems? Will white people be willing to give up their privilege? So if you think about it, white organizations grow rich in working in Black neighborhoods where the donation-starved Black organizations are the folks who are doing the community work best. And we don't do this for Jewish organizations. Christians don't hit them. We don't do it for women's groups. We don't have men running women's organizations. We don't have straight people running LGBTQI organizations. So why does this happen in Black communities? So as white people, I think even the best of us has been tarred by our racist culture, and no matter how liberal our upbringing has been. So I would suggest white people stop crying on the shoulders of your Black friends and looking for their pity to assuage your guilt. If you say something stupid, apologize immediately. White people, we all have neighbors and friends. We work for foundations, corporations, government. We can say something and we can do something. I'm done.
Well, there you have it.
You told me to make a speech.
Next up, we have Matthew Parker.
Good day, folks. I am Matthew. I am a Black man who has intentionally chosen to work with, in collaboration with folks to undo the harms of racial inequalities that's been plaguing us forever. As an artist and creative, and also as an organizer who believes you got to break the system and rebuild it. But if that's not what we can do, then how do we shape it in a way that's more equitable for the people who have been at the bottom of it, who yet historically have built things up? And I also want to just say thank you for being present, for being part of the conversation. And as long as we're respectful, ask the hard questions. Don't say the N-word, anybody. That's my ask today. Think it all you want. Most folks do, whether they're Black or white, but please, let's keep it as respectful as possible. And any questions, I look forward to answering or passing it to somebody who's probably better equipped, like the rest of this panel.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Natalie Karpeski.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to kind of echo all of those sentiments and thank everybody for being here. I am here to speak on my experience as an ally, as a white woman in a relationship with a long-term relationship with a Black man and a mixed family. So I will be talking a little bit about my thoughts and my experience about being an effective ally. And I'm also here because I'm interested to hear what everyone else has to say, how we can elevate our allyship if you're already experiencing that, and to kind of engage in some open dialogue about where to start for some other people. So I'm really, really excited to be here.
Thank you. All right, so we'll jump backwards a little bit and we'll let Justine speak from her point of view. Again, if you have any questions, please utilize the chat box. And if you want to ask a question to a certain member of the panel, just select their name and you can ask them directly. If not, you can ask all of the panel by selecting everyone. Thank you.
All right. So I was, past tense, in a long-term relationship with a white man who was about 7 years older than me, which came with its own stuff, right? So being with a white man was interesting. When I first brought it to my family, my mom smiled and didn't say much, but my dad said, "Can he handle this?" And this was years ago, college, maybe undergrad. I'm like, he'll be fine. He's fine. It's okay. I'll teach him, if anything, right? He could not handle it. He did the best that he could at the time, but he could not handle it. So there were some struggles, being the only Black girl at the table, not only in my school, even now. Like I said earlier, I'm in an educational program, graduate program. I am one of 3 in my program, 2020, right? So I go back home with this relationship with my ex, and I am sitting at a table surrounded by white people, which I got used to. so I thought, but not really. Things would come up, ignorant comments. How's Alicia Keys doing? Not sure at all. I don't talk to Alicia Keys on a regular basis. We're not friends. I'm not sure, but you probably know as much as I do. Things like that came up, or the common questions. How does your hair get like that? Do you ever think about having it straight? No, I mean, I probably think about it as much as you do, but that's pretty much it. Or things, in the spiritual aspect of things where I found that culturally, and this is not for everyone, I'm just speaking from my experience, my family was a lot more close knit, and we kept things private in our family. We were almost a closed system. I'm not sure if everyone knows what that means. What stays in the family stays in the family. Once you step outside, it's no one else's business. That's what a closed system means. I found that his family was a little more surface with each other. They didn't really talk about things that mattered. In my opinion, they would talk about weather or plants, or they would, and that didn't sit right with me. And so as a marriage and family therapist, I challenged them, and I was called aggressive, right? And note to self, take notes, do not call a Black woman aggressive. She's not being aggressive. We've heard that far too much. We are only challenging you in an attempt to help you see something that you are probably not seeing, okay? And that's gonna trickle into what I'll talk about in a second. Challenges are not an attack to your character. They're simply just a little bit of pushback so that you can get uncomfortable, so that you can push forward. It's an attempt for you to grow. And if you choose to step along that journey, then fantastic. And if not, you can't call yourself an ally. You can't say that you're actually doing something. You can't say that you're helping, because you're not helping anybody. You're not even helping yourself. The family aspect was difficult for us. My family tried to be very inclusive. I come from a mixed background, like Natalie said. I'm not necessarily connected to Aja and Rochelle, but I've adopted myself into their family for years, and that's how my family is. So if you come to our home, boom, you're family. When I stepped into his family's home, it was completely different. There were eyes. Oh, who are you here with? I'm here with this person. That's my partner. Oh, really? Don't do that. Don't do that. That's rude. That's hurtful. And I mean, at the time, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who do this, you put on the face of, oh, no, well, that didn't hurt me at all, because why would you say something like that? And you'll notice the head tilt. I'm very observant, so I'm going to be watching all of you today. The head tilt comes in because that's the attitude, like, why would you say something like that, right? Where maybe they don't hear what they're saying, or maybe they do hear what they're saying, but it's been so normal to say for so long and no one's challenged them that it's almost become okay. So how can you be are we at this part? Should I continue in this part?
Please do. And if you want to address the latest comments or questions in the chat, feel free. I can type answers as you talk, but if you see something and want to say something, by all means.
I don't know if I'm that good. Can I multitask? Okay. So I'll look at the questions after if I can. But I'll talk about how you can be white people can be allies in a relationship, and I'm sure it'll apply to other aspects, not just a romantic relationship, but friends, neighbor, stranger, whatever, white ally, okay? Be prepared and willing to talk about race, ethnicity, culture. Be willing to talk about it all. If you're going to call yourself an ally, if you're willing to do something and you've said, I am choosing this role, then you have to be ready for the job, because we're already in it, right? It's not like we can wake up and say, all right, well, I don't really feel like being Black today. No. You wake up Black and you put on I put on my armor every day. I put on my armor and I have to be ready to go because I don't know what's coming for me. I'm not even sure if I'm coming home. So be prepared to talk about those things, okay? Also, initiate those conversations. It's okay to ask questions, okay? I know some people are, maybe they're upset or they're tired of the questions. That's okay. Respect their space. If they're tired and they don't want to hear a question right now, then don't ask them, okay? I know these past few days I've been up to here and it's past the camera because you can't even see how far I'm gone. Don't ask me how I'm doing. That's a silly question, right? You know how I'm doing. And if you don't know, right into the next one, educate yourself, right? There are enough resources out there for you to see what's going on. We have personal experiences, we got audio, we have video, we have books, we have articles, you have all types of things. And even if you have like this panel, right? Praise God for technology, okay? You have this panel where you have all these people who are willing to talk about these things and share experiences. Be open and be willing. Also know that you don't have all the answers, right? You're never gonna have all the answers. So if I'm gonna say my name because I don't want to offend anyone. If Justine comes up to Sue and Justine just wants to talk about her pain and her day and what she just faced, someone spit in my face today, don't feel like you need to have all the answers, right? That's not why I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you because I found some comfort in who you were. And perhaps I just needed you to be there and I needed someone to listen to me. Perhaps the rest of my day, I felt like I was unheard, unseen, and I'm coming to you so that you can listen to me. So please do so. And don't feel like you need to fill space with silence because silence is powerful and it can go both ways. Either it's, I'm not going to say anything because it sounds like she said it all. Or it could be, I'm not going to say anything because I'm just scared and I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at right now. In a relationship, this resonates for me. Stand up for your partner. My partner didn't do that, right? I found myself having to stand up for myself, which is a typical thing for me to do. But if I have a man, someone who, this is another dimension. If you are willing to call yourself a man and you are also willing to say, I want to be with you, I want to spend my life with you, then you have responsibilities, not just as a man, but now understanding that you're a white man partnered with a Black woman and your privilege will sometimes, according to everyone else, overshadow what she has to offer. So you need to be able to echo, thank you for using that word, Natalie, echo, and amplify what we are saying. Please don't change the message, right? We listen to what you have to say. Please listen to what we have to say. Understand the heightened desire and connection with our own culture. That does not mean, this is just an example, Black Lives Matter, right? That is one example of a heightened desire and connection to my own culture, Black culture. That matters to me. It's not to say that other cultures, other lives don't matter, right? But I feel a heightened sense of protection. I feel a heightened sense of desire and connection to my culture because it's under attack. And so I'm trying to hold on and to preserve everything before it's gone. I don't know. Will it happen? Will it not? I'm not sure. Not sure. You'll never be done learning, okay? I have my notes here, that's why I'm looking down. You'll never be done learning, and you have to be willing and able to push the bar, okay? If you see your white friends, or maybe not white friends, white neighbor, it gets tricky when it's in the workplace, but white coworkers, if they say something that's wrong, you have to say something. Please do not expect Justine to say, that was racist, or that was stereotypical, or that's a prime example of discrimination. You say it. Like, it's okay for you to say it. They expect us to say it. Oh, here we go. This Black person just blowing another thing out of proportion. No, you have to say it so that you are saying, no, actually I see it too. And this is racism. It sucks that we live that way, but when you echo what we're saying, it validates, granted my word is valid by itself, but it validates what this person of color is saying. Okay. Also, this is my last point. Just ask them what they need. It could be in a simple relationship. It could be in a long-term relationship, a sexual, casual, whatever you're doing. Ask them what you need. What do you need? Maybe you have more resources than they do, or maybe they have more resources than you do. It doesn't matter. Ask people what they need and show up for them and follow through. And that is my segment. So let me read these questions here. Rochelle, if you see any questions or anyone, read them to me because I'm scrolling.
I'm trying to answer. This is a good question from Claire's sister. I've been dating men of color who told me that they didn't think their families would accept me as a white woman. They date a woman of color. Do you feel like this is common? Yes, 100%. Yes. And I say that as a Black woman with no kids. I don't have any kids, but if I did have a son or daughter who came home, especially in today's climate, and said, "Mom, I have a white boyfriend or a white girlfriend," I'm like, cool. But what are they doing? What are they doing? Are they going to be out here protesting with you? Are they going to be in the streets? Are they going to use their white privileged bodies to protect you from tear gas, to make sure that you don't get choked out in the streets? There is a fundamental difference on, white people or any white person in a relationship supporting their Black partner versus a Black woman or a Black man going hard for their partner. Like, I would literally die for my Black husband. As a white partner to your Black partner, would you die for them over this? Would you? I want to know. Answer me in the chat. I would love to know. That's wonderful if you would. Kudos to you. You can go ahead and answer. I'm sorry.
I think you just did. I think you just did. Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything you just said because that stood on its own. So here's some silence that just says yes to that.
I'm so proud of people who are answering yes to that question. I want to believe it. So I guess we can
here really quickly that says, what is a good opener for this conversation, from Olivia? I'm not sure if you mean this conversation, like if you want to have this conversation. I see you, Olivia, so just nod your head if that's what you mean. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I wanted to check in because it's a hard time. That's okay. Be willing to sit. I would say be willing to sit for that. Everyone's not gonna receive it the same. How are you doing is okay for some people. It's not okay for me, right? I'm not sure what kind of personality you have. You could just say, I wanted to check in because it's a hard time. Or you could say, talk to me. Like, what? I don't want to say the wrong thing. Just talk to me. I'm here. Turn your phone off and just be there. Be there for that person and show them that you are ready and available to support them.
I'm going to pass the baton to Natalie because she can piggyback off of being in an interracial relationship. I would ask if the panel can chime in on all of these great questions in the chat while Natalie is speaking, so we can make sure we get to as much people as possible.
Yeah, thank you, Justine. That was really insightful to hear some of the things that you find helpful or that you would desire from your partner, even for me to take in as having a Black partner. So thank you for sharing that. There was one this question here about how do we make sure the narrative doesn't change from white ally to white savior. I think that is such like a great point, and I hope that this kind of comes up a little bit later because this is something I would like to hear a little bit more about too. So I'll back up a little bit. I'm here to speak again on the relationship aspect of it as somebody who's been in an 8-year relationship with a Black man who's Rochelle and Aja's brother. So I did write down a few notes too to just kind of organize my thoughts, because I do consider myself a longtime ally, but I'm always looking on ways, previous to being an interracial relationship also, but always looking on ways to really elevate that. And as a heightened sense of importance, engaging in an interracial relationship and accepting that role and responsibility, again, to Justine's point, and then definitely with the current climate of the world. And it can be really overwhelming. And I think that's why a lot of us are here. There's a lot of information and there's a lot of stimulation being thrown at us on a daily basis. And so I wanted to make sure that I could kind of organize my thoughts. So I did make like kind of 3 big talking points. And the first one is like motive, like what is your motive and your sincerity and your allyship? And then kind of some ideas. I think a lot of us are here to talk about like actionable things that we can be doing, because that's what we really need in the world right now, is a lot of conversation and reposting, and those are great, but what does it actually change? So I'll share some actionable things that have worked for me, and interested in hearing what other people think, or additional ideas. And then the final piece of it is like really how to stay focused during these times, as to not change the narrative, as to not be distracted, and really stay steadfast in what the goal is. So the first piece of it that I want to kind of touch base on, going back, is again motive. So like, as white people, honestly, we have a choice whether we want to be an ally. That's part of our privilege. So really like self-reflection, and when engaging in any relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a work relationship, the why behind it is so important. And if your intentions are not sincere or genuine, it doesn't matter about the rest of it. So I think it's really going deep into yourself and that self-reflection piece, and being like, what's the why behind this? Why is this important to me? Why do I care about this? Why does this matter? And why am I doing it? I think when you can establish a sincerity in your allyship, you're going to be a lot more confident speaking to your Black and brown friends and colleagues, and not have so much doubt that you're going to be saying the wrong things. Because if you genuinely care in your heart and your soul, everything you're going to say, everything that comes out is going to be genuine. So I think that's the first piece, is to really sit down and ask yourself those questions. Like, why is it important to me to be a good ally, and identify that. It only matters if you're genuine. And I think if you're not genuine, then just stay out of the way. Like, just don't interfere, and go somewhere else. Like, there's a lot of noise that's being created by people who can't decide if they want to be an ally or not. And if they just stay out of the way, I think that's the best choice for you. I don't think anybody here falls into that, because you wouldn't be here. I think another huge piece of that, and this is something that I'm constantly working on, is being aware of your own biases. As somebody comes from generational racism, and I don't know, there's maybe, I'm going to scroll through the videos. If you have come from a generational racist family, maybe not a little bit. I think, yeah, okay. I see like a lot of hands up. My grandma was outright racist. My parents don't think they're racist, but they kind of are. And that's a challenge for me too. Have you guys all seen the meme of the triangle, where like the top of it is like, you know, systematic racism, and then all underneath it is like these huge examples of microaggressions and all that. That's like, my family falls into a lot of those categories, which is a big challenge for me in my allyship. And part of what I think being a good ally is being ready to address those things. And again, to echo Justine's point, is like being ready to talk about things and challenging them, even if it means your family. I'm not saying lose your family over this, unless it comes to that, because, you know, you got to move with me or move without me. But I think the education part of it, and being prepared and confident to talk about these things and really shed light on people that you care about, and get them on your side, is a huge part of allyship. And then I think this kind of addresses a point about like white saviorism, is like, nobody wants sympathy, right? It's empathy. Like, you need to understand the challenges that exist and absorb that information and believe that information when somebody tells you what their experience is like as a Black or brown person. You can't live it, So you have to understand it to create empathy so that you understand what's going on and what the challenges are, so that you'll move differently in the world when you understand that. So that kind of brings me into sort of like actionable behaviors for long-term support of people of color. Because I think, to Sue's point earlier, what happens after all of this? What happens when the protests stop? Is this gonna like get swept under the rug like a lot of other times that it has been swept under the rug by white people? So I think what is important is like that your actions are long-term and ongoing. So reading, educating yourself on what you already know, beyond what you might already know, or if you don't know anything, start from the beginning. When you can understand the injustices that have existed in our country since the beginning of time, then you will function differently in the world and you can better serve your allies. I think Rochelle has created a document that has lots of a reading list, right? Perfect. Yeah. So we do have links to information for that if you are interested in learning more and reading more. I think being aware of the laws and the laws that are being passed and how they affect the Black and brown communities when you're voting in your local elections is a huge conversation that I haven't heard a lot of. And I think that's that's a way that you can be an ongoing ally, is to not only, when you're voting on these ballots, not only think about how it affects you, but thinking about a bigger picture, reading deeper into this and understanding how it's going to affect other communities, and then voting accordingly so that that these laws won't affect other people negatively, or that they can help other people positively. I think where you're spending your money is a really important thing to consider, and a really great way that you can support Black and brown communities long-term outside of like donations currently. Do some research about what Black and brown businesses, Black and brown owned businesses are in your general area, so that when you're out and about and you're thinking about where should I have dinner tonight, whenever we can do that again, and you already know that there's like 3 or 4 Black or brown owned restaurants near you, then you can make those choices. Knowing where, there's a local coffee shop that's owned by a Black or brown person, as opposed to spending all your money at Starbucks, because money is power. And I think if we're allocating our money to different places, that we can be more supportive of our Black and brown communities. Find a nonprofit that you can help support, that you can volunteer your time. Volunteering opportunities always exist, and they're ongoing and they're long-term. And then share those experiences with your network, share it on social media, that you can inspire other people beyond reposting memes. Like, here's what I did today and here's how it made me feel, and this is an opportunity for you too, and you can help other people, so that you can inspire others to do the same. Here's a big one for me, and this is something that I've been learning currently, is like being prepared to intervene safely and legally if you ever see something happening when you're out. So what I mean by this is, and I do have an organization that I can share with everybody if you're interested. I'll put it in the chat in a little bit. It's called Holla Back. And essentially what they do is they teach webinars and have literature about how you can protect people out in the public if they are being harassed, by police, if they're being harassed on the train, and ways that you can do that tactilely and in a way that's safe and effective, so that you can diffuse situations and, again, use your privilege to protect other people that need it. Another piece of this is like supporting like your friends. I feel like, how many of you have like Black and brown friends that are like musicians or that own small businesses, and how many times are we showing up at their shows or their events or things like that? I think it's really important to show like even your direct community and your loved ones that you support them and that you care about them. That's super important, and if it takes a, make the time for it. It shows that you care and that those things are important to you. This is something I wrote down as being, if you're in a leadership position, which I'm seeing a lot of this in the chat here about kind of like work dynamics. Ensuring that your workplace is comfortable for everybody. And I think that's like HR 101, but I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree that the HRs in your company are not maybe protecting you in the way that they should. I know, Rochelle, that face you're making right now, So in a leadership position, it is your responsibility to make sure that your workplace feels comfortable for everybody who works there. It's really easy to let microaggressions and small comments slide, and that's not okay. They can be very difficult conversations, but they're super important to have, and again, your responsibility to have. As somebody who's in a leadership position, everyone on my staff knows that no, we don't go there. I've had hard conversations, and it needs to happen. You need to ensure that your workplace is safe for everybody. Another note that I have here is, again, kind of echoing what Justine was saying, is about relationships, is like open dialogue. So being able to ask those questions, being able to offer your support in an open-ended way where you're not asking them to tell you what they need, or just being prepared to have those conversations and making sure that you're showing support, especially during difficult times. This is something that I am eager to hear more about from you guys too, because I think it's a hard balance for sure. And the last piece of that is like identifying your lane. Like, where are you going to be the most impactful as an ally? So the question that I've been trying to ask my direct community is like, what are your skill sets and how can you use it as allyship? So for example, are you a photographer? Are you a videographer? Like, how can you use that to help move the movement forward? How can you use it to help support your friends who are doing work in this field, and volunteering services to help with that? I mean, everybody has a talent, everybody can contribute to the world. So how can you view that and use that to enhance your allyship? I guess the last piece of it is like really staying steadfast during these times. Like, this can be very challenging and there is a lot of noise. So I think taking care of yourself, taking time to regroup if you need it, and taking time to really stay focused on what you're trying to contribute, and just blocking out the noise that's unnecessary, so that you can be stronger for other people, that you can stay focused on your mission. So there was a question here that I'm going to revisit. And I'm sorry, I feel a little bit long-winded right now. I'm just scrolling up. When you talk about inspiring others by sharing your actions, how can you avoid doing so performatively or in a way that draws attention to yourself? I love that. So I think, again, Rebecca's asking, when you talk about inspiring others by sharing your actions, I think this was in reference to be like, you know, if you're volunteering, share that information, share that experience, and doing so in a way that it doesn't look performative. I think this is quality over quantity when you're talking about your social media platform. Like, if you're constantly reposting every single meme you see and there's no thought behind it, right? There's a difference between thoughtful posting and reposting. This is where things can start to feel performative. Even maybe this means sending private messages to your network, or to people who you think would be interested in an opportunity like this. I guess my answer to that is like quality posting, thoughtful posting, thoughtful messages attached to your posts. Does that answer? I hope that's helpful. I don't know, I guess that's all I have. I'm really interested to kind of hear what everyone else is saying. I feel honored to be here, to be involved in this conversation. And I'm eager to have these conversations. I wish more people were having these conversations, because this is what we need. We need to figure out what the plan is. If you don't have a plan, figure it out and put it into action.
Thank you, Natalie. I want to, Claire, are you here?
I am here.
Claire is here. Claire is a former coworker of mine and somebody I consider very close to me. She's family. She's like a sister to me. And she asked if she could have the floor right now. So please share your story.
Sure. So I wanted to bring up a instance of racism in the workplace, or at least something that was blatantly obvious to me. So Rochelle and I were working at the same insert large healthcare organization, and it came to our attention that there was a pay discrepancy amongst the people employed all at the same pay grade. And I was being paid more. And Rochelle has more degrees than me. The other woman in question, also a woman of color, had been there for 7 years prior to Rochelle and I. So that's an additional 7 years of experience in the department. And we found all of this out when we were hiring another person at our pay grade who happened to be a white woman, and we found out she was going to be paid even more than me because she decided to disclose her salary. So that spurred me to question, and I openly shared my salary information because I was concerned because someone was just employed at my pay grade who did not have the institutional experience, who did not have the same amount of qualifications, who did not finish a university education. And here I am feeling upset where my counterparts come to find out after conversations with them, were getting paid less than me. So in this experience, I found that it was one upsetting because to me it was blatantly racist, but it didn't seem that way to anybody else I talked to. In like the cursory conversations I had with management, they made offhanded excuses, or they made, oh well, we factored excuse after excuse. And I had conversations with Rochelle, and what I ended up doing is I put all of our pay information into Excel spreadsheets. I cross-compared everything. I made graphs and charts, and eventually everything got brought to HR. And I realized the most effective thing I could do was say that it was racist, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Rochelle, but both the women, like the women of color, like Rochelle being one of them, didn't feel like they were able to play the race card. They didn't feel like they wanted to, say it was racist or say it was because of an issue with like skin color. And for me saying that to a majority white organization, because I'm white, made it less like arguable as a fact, like just saying, no, this is bullshit. Excuse my language.
I was going to say it was bullshit too. So.
Solidly bullshit.
And Rochelle and I fought with this probably for about six months.
It was a very long time. And I just want to add to this. The kicker is that I was the supervisor for this white woman who was being hired, and I made it a point to the hiring department, if you will, that coming in, she was requesting a salary that was too high for her entry-level position. On top of that, I would have to be the one to train her. Why would I train somebody with who's getting paid more than me? It was really ridiculous. Continue.
Yeah, and I mean, the extent we had to go to get everything heard and addressed and readdressed, and the amount of paperwork and additional work that was required to justify our complaint was just enormous. And the burden of proof was on us and not with the organization we worked for. And it was extremely frustrating, and I can't imagine how much more frustrated Rochelle was, because I mean, here she is doing this extra work to justify just existing in this workplace. So it still happens, is like, we like to think of like in the past, like, oh, like we're talking about, this was what, 2 years ago?
Not even.
Not even.
And I just want to point out, this is effective allyship on full display, because if it wasn't for Claire, I would probably be unemployed right now, because I would have definitely quit. And, you know, there would be no equality in that department. At least I can only speak for the department. So how can you be an effective ally? Go to bat for your white friend, your Black friend, your Black colleague, your Black whatever. Go to bat for them. Don't be afraid. And Claire did all these things, and it was so funny because Claire wrote a letter on my behalf, and we sent it in, and they said, "Oh, this is so aggressive." I said, "Really?" Because Claire wrote that. I didn't. So, I mean, talk to her. So that is a prime example of how to be an ally.
Thank you for letting me speak about that experience. To this day, I still am bothered, and I don't feel like that organization, they did, in their minds, rectify the situation, and the pay discrepancy was quote unquote fixed, but the emotional harm and damage that was done was not fixed. The amount of stress they caused was not fixed. So it was not great. So yes, the pay was fixed. It was adjusted. It took months, but to answer your questions, it was eventually, in their eyes, fixed. But I know for a fact, for other people who work at that institution, pay discrepancy is still a rampant problem throughout, and it's in healthcare. And to answer one of the questions, I am now a nurse. At the time, I was not a nurse. I'm currently pursuing my doctoral degree in nursing. Right now, I no longer work at that company. So that's me.
And I still work there, and I have been hiring Black people one at a time.
Yeah. The company in general needs to do such a better job with recruiting and the way they try and hire people. It is sad and ridiculous that one of these premier health institutions does so poorly.
All right, does anybody else from our panel want to speak? Matt, maybe? If not, we can just open the floor up to a Q&A.
Hi, can I say something to?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Sue.
Hi. I find this very confusing. I'm sorry, I'm old. Somebody named Ariel Schwartz asked a question about education and preparing future health professionals. Did you see that question? I didn't know how to answer it typing. So basically, there seemed to be in her department Black teachers and Black students, even if they're not, the faculty of color is minimal. If you're having problems figuring out what to do and how to say it, I'd ask them. That's my 2 cents worth.
Cool. Thank you, Sue. What I will say at this current point, I don't really, I'm not sure what will be most effective. On the grand scheme of things, I can say that I've been trying to answer some of the questions in the chat. And honestly, it's like how to show up for someone. It's like, how would you want someone to show up for you? If you were dealt an injustice, if you were harmed, if you were hurt, what do you look for comfort, for care? That's the important piece, right? And you got to think about the fact that in historical context, folks like years of slavery, then Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and every other bit of like resistance to what equity and equality looks like for Black people. There is nothing quite like the plight and oppression of Black people in America, because it's happened for so long. This is still things that we fight through and try to cope with, and operate as normal as possible. But these things are not normal, nor are they right or fair. I will ask or call to task for folks to think about not just empathizing, but what are your actions? I know Rochelle said actions in the chat, and what those actions can look like. And yes, Black people are upset, angry, sad, harmed, depressed, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're the person who might be asking, well, what can I do, or what happened, or are you okay? It's tough. And yeah, sometimes the responses may not be justified if you're coming from a genuine place, but Black people are tired. We shouldn't have to be the teachers of the oppression that we face. And that's just the honesty of that. We're always dealing with our own traumas, our own harms, and then to have to figure out how to navigate how you feel about it, in your quest to understand me is like another task in itself, right? And it's tiresome. So sometimes it's like you have to sit down, you have to do the work yourself, as an ally. You have to figure out why you shouldn't say certain things, or what are triggering words for Black folks to elicit the responses that may or may not be warranted. And showing up could be as simple as standing by them. And there were some other examples that were listed in the chat, but and then this beautiful example that we just heard, there's just so many ways to show up. I will say this before we move into the thing, and I might reiterate it again later. Another way to show up is to assist in folks being able to operate on their own. Energy, time, financial resources, donate them to causes you believe in. If you really believe in upliftment, empowerment, and equality and equity of Black people, then it's like, you know that white orgs get funded way better than Black organizations. So instead of donating to the Jimmy Fund for Jimmy's Kids, which is a great, I'm not taking anything away from any charities or any other giving, but there might be a local organization that might survive, depending or not if people decide to fund it or donate to it, as opposed to the larger courses of things that are just as and equally important, but their donations are always going to be incoming. And speaking of that, I work for a wonderful organization, the Union of Minority Neighborhoods. I also do some work with Rochelle and Aja at the BLAC Project from time to time as well. So those are two Black organizations that you feel compelled to want to volunteer, donate to, talk with, please do so. They're really important causes that do amazing work, and I'm not supposed to necessarily just be tooting horns, but I'm gonna toot those horns because the impactful work that both organizations are doing is really powerful, and it's a way that you contribute to the Black cause.
So really quickly, I just wanted to jump in. Maddie, thanks for making the question public. She said, as an ally, I know we'll mess up. I have messed up in the past and was challenged, and I have apologized and validated emotions, but of course I was upset with myself for not being better and doing better. As a result, I found myself feeling awkward around the person who had challenged me. How do you recommend navigating the situation, as being challenged and learning will be uncomfortable, and I want to continue to learn without feeling like this person hates me or dislikes me and they are done with me. So anyone can answer this. I'm just gonna put how I feel about this question really quickly, and then you guys can answer if you please. So this goes back to what I was saying before. I know it's really easy to fall into But a challenge is not an attack to your character. It is not an attack to who you are. If you are beautiful and you are genuine, then thank you. Thank you for coming along this ride and choosing to be a part of this. The challenge is just to say, look, I'm just going to give it to you straight. You're wrong. And here's why. Okay? Or it's going to sound like you need to check yourself because here's why. Okay? Take some time. Honestly, you don't have to feel like you need to respond immediately. And this is what I was saying earlier. You don't have to fill in the empty space, right? That's a moment. If someone's telling you to check yourself, that means you need to take a step back and check yourself, right? Natalie, I think someone was talking about bias, right? We all have implicit bias. It doesn't matter what color you are, where you come from. I'm not racist. Yes, you are, okay? Check that and try to understand why. Also, try to understand why you're feeling uncomfortable. What about this situation is making you uncomfortable? Why do you feel like you need to defend yourself, right? What is it about you or what is it about this person that makes you feel like you have to defend yourself? And then when you've taken that time to process, have a conversation with someone else. Openly processing is a learning experience for you and other people. And when you've gone through part of that process, you can revisit that person. I'm not going to say they don't hate you. I mean, that's strong, but chances are they may really appreciate the fact that you followed up, because most people don't. Most people, when challenged, they're like, "Oh, okay, bitch," and then that's the last I hear from them, right? If you are able to check yourself, process, have a conversation with somebody else, and then come back and say, "Hey, look, I worked on this. Can we continue this conversation?" Chances are they'll see you as an ally.
Anybody else want to add to that? I'm moving on to this aggressive thing because I like it. I get told I'm aggressive all the time, like all the time, every day. I don't care. I feel like, especially in today's climate, you need to be aggressive to get your point across. I don't care if I get told I'm aggressive. Why aren't you more aggressive in trying to fight for somebody who we only want basic civil rights? Why can't you be more aggressive? I don't care what people think about my aggression. I don't care that people think I'm angry all the time. I am. I'm pissed off all the time. Sometimes I wake up, especially this past few weeks, I look at my phone, I crawl into my husband's lap, put the cover over my head and start crying. That is my reality. That is the world that I'm living in. So yeah, I'm angry. Yes, I'm aggressive because I want change. I don't think you should care. If you're pushing for positive change, if you're pushing for a revolution, who cares what people think about you? Who cares if you get told that you're aggressive every day? That's just me. I hope I help somebody, but I don't think you should care about that. I just don't. There was another question really far up about how there are a lot of women in this conversation and not a lot of white men. Oh man, I lost it. But basically how to get white men on board. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have an answer for that. I feel like if people want to change, they will. If they don't, they won't. I don't really feel like you should waste your time trying to force change on somebody who is just not going to change. Move on. Move on to somebody who has an open heart and open mind that actually wants to do good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with that, because I was kind of responding to that question earlier about like who cares, but then the follow-up question was, well, then I'm getting labeled as I can't remember the words. It was like emotional or hysterical, which is a word that women get labeled with a lot when they're passionate about something, and that says more about the person who's labeling that than it says about yourself. And so the response that I had to that was, I think that kind of ties back to educating yourself, and so that way you can speak to somebody, if you still care to speak to somebody like that and you still want to work on that person, that you can speak to them from a place of logic and fact, as opposed to speaking from a place of emotion, which gives them less ground to stand on to kind of give you that pushback. So the education piece of it comes in so that you can have those conversations confidently, because you know what you're talking about. When you're not sure about facts, then a lot of it comes out as emotion. It's not good or bad. Either one is not good or bad, because sometimes you need to come from a place of emotion so somebody can feel that this is important to you. But if you're working on somebody who is going to be easy to label, or it's going to be a little bit more difficult to try to talk sense into, then I think coming from a place of logic is the best route. And that's where like the reading piece of it comes in. I connect to this, and the reason I kind of chimed in on it is because I care about my family. I want my family to be on the right side of history, and I need to learn how to speak to my father. Like, I need to learn how to have hard conversations with him so that he can see his biases, because he doesn't see them. And he says, well, I'm not racist, I have black friends. You know, we all have somebody like that on our Facebook feed. I'm not racist, I have black friends. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like, your biases are showing, you're not aware of them. And I believe that if you tuned into them, that you could be better. You could be a better ally. You could be an ally if you acknowledge those things. So that's why I need to educate myself more, to be able to speak to him from a place of logic, to get him to see those things. And that's important to me. And that's part of my goal as being an ally, for my family, you know, to kind of get them on board, because that's important to me, and it's important to my relationship.
Melissa had a question, and how do we speak to young white people around high school age about using the N-word casually with their friends, like using it as a synonym for friend, and why it's not okay, and how to speak up to their friends when they're hearing it? Well, I don't know if I have an answer for that. Like, go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
My answer is don't condone it, don't allow it. Sometimes even in our misguided youths, I would say in their quest for friendship, for bonding and kinship, they give out passes more blissfully, ignorantly, and innocent than just willful and maliciously. The impact and meaning behind that word, the historical context of it, is really hard to separate when it's been absorbed by street culture, which turned to hip hop, which turned into popular culture. But with that being said, the initial meaning of it, the initial meaning of it, and the off-puttingness of it between cultures, especially when it's used like in different ways, right? I'm not going to give examples of those ways today. I'm in a good space, and I also think it will compromise this conversation so far a little bit. But I do believe that just because of the institutional power dynamics and structures of racism in this country, it's just not something that should be used, especially especially by white people. And then also, it's also our job as parents, as mentors and caregivers to give our white children some historical context of why that's not okay. Even if you're getting Black permission to use it, it's still not okay. And anybody else can chime in too.
Using the N-word, I don't think they understand. I mean, Matt talked about the historical issues around it, but if you explain to people, it's like dropping a nuclear bomb on them when you use it, when you're not Black. You know, maybe you have to really describe something that way. have them look at their friends, their Black friends, when they use the word and see what happens.
That's a hard one. Okay, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I'm gonna say something. That's a hard one. I was just laughing because I personally don't like the word. When I hear it, like Sue says, it connects to a past. It connects to a trauma that was and still is, and it's unfair and it's sad and it causes anger and it causes heartbreak and confusion, and I feel unsettled. And so for a teacher, I'm not sure how you would get across getting that message along to your students, maybe just saying that. I don't know, I didn't look to see how many people of color are in this chat, but those of us who don't like that, I find it is my responsibility to tell people, like, don't use that. Don't use that with me. Don't use it, period, but definitely don't use that with me. And when I'm teaching kids, sometimes I teach little sessions with kids, because kids use it these days, young ones, because, you know, they're sponges. And so if they hear it, they use it, right? I put them on mute. And it sounds rough, but whatever, right? I put them on mute for 2 minutes, whatever they can handle. And I sit in front of them. And so when they're sitting in front of me in silence, they are forced to feel discomfort. And after those few minutes, I explain to them, hey, this is what that word means to me every time you use it. And then I take that time to explain to them. Works for me, you're free to use it. If it doesn't work for you, share what else works for you.
I think that as Black people, we've taken that word and we've changed it a little bit, and I think it's become a coping mechanism. The way that we use it with our friends, it's become a way to kind of desensitize ourselves so that we don't feel the negative connotation that it was supposed to be, that it was used for before. And I think that we need to realize that it is a coping mechanism, and that we shouldn't be using that, because regardless of whether or not we mean it positively, that's not what people see it as. That's not how people see us when they see us using that word or when they hear us using that word. And I believe it is something that we need to monitor in ourselves, but also something that as allies they can hold accountable. They can hold their friends accountable to, and the people that are around them, because this using it as a coping mechanism is not going to make that negative connotation disappear.
I want to move on to another question. Claire's sister, I'll answer that question offline, just because I want to get to this one. Any advice for folks engaging with immigrant brown communities who are having trouble separating their own racial trauma from the movement and from centering Black lives? That's a really good question. Before I try to answer it, does anybody on the panel have anything to say? I'm going to read it again. Any advice for folks engaging with immigrant/brown communities who are having trouble separating their own racial trauma from the movement and from just putting the Black Lives Matter movement front and center? It's such a multifaceted question. Just tell them to stop. Like, you'll have your own time. Like, I don't feel like there are a lot of others being gunned down in the street or being, put in chokeholds and things. Like, I don't see any others. Like, this is not your time because your people aren't out here being killed. Further, whenever there are other movements, Black people are amongst the first people in line to support your movement, whatever it is. whatever community it is. So why can't you put yourself aside for a second, for a community that is still fighting for basic rights? Basic. Just stop. That's my answer. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in. No?
Okay. You made me do it. All right. So any advice for folks engaging with, this is how I read, with immigrant brown communities who are having trouble separating their own racial trauma? Okay. So any advice for folks? Are we talking about folks who, okay, who asked this question? Are we talking about folks who are white or folks who are brown? Because I think the answer changes for me.
Yeah, I gave more of a generalized answer. I'm going to assume it's other non-Black people, but not white people. That's just what I'm assuming.
She said brown, he or she said brown. Okay, brown folks. You're going to get the therapist answer, okay? Separating you can't really separate trauma, okay? Trauma just is. It's like pain. If Sue feels pain and Justine feels pain, you cannot compare the pain. You just need to now focus on what is behind the pain. How are you reacting? We need to focus, because we're reactive, we're people, right? That's what we do. That's what you're seeing. Reacting. People reacting. White people reacting. We're all reacting. So after you feel that pain and that trauma, what are you doing with it? You don't have to separate the trauma, because my trauma and Matthew's trauma or Marie's trauma could be from different places. But if that anger is understood, and I felt trauma too, I feel that pain, you can push towards not necessarily centering Black lives, but you can just support the movement. If you're angry, that's okay. Good. Be angry, as Rochelle said. We're angry too. Okay, TOO, that means also, which means we're not negating how you feel. We are asking for your support. You're angry? Look, I'm angry too. Support my movement. And when you're angry and you have a movement, I'll be there to support yours. I mean, I hope that helps. If that doesn't work and that person is unable to even name their trauma, I would recommend therapy, and that's not even a joke. Like, you need to do some digging in yourself to figure out what's going on for you before you can productively be an ally. Because being an ally is not just being out there hooting and waving hands and stuff. You have to actually do something that's productive and effective.
You gave a better answer than me. Just stop. Question for everyone. What could reparations look like both at an individual and institutional level? How can allies participate in making reparations happen?
I was trying to answer that in the chat, but I'll answer it out loud for the most part. I think reparations, first off, is a very difficult subject matter. And this extends way past like Reconstruction, just like from like when slavery, indentured servitude, and all that stuff first commenced. Like, what does that look like? And I don't know what the dollar number would be, but I think somewhere close to whatever the U.S. national debt is. That sounds about right.
Can I say something on this?
Sure.
Right now, with the protests now, in their 11th or 12th day, there's talks about all sorts of things. This is a good time for local communities and states to begin to really do reparations. Don't call it the R word. Oh, people hate it, but just get more money for Black communities. There are ways to do that. And that's where people can advocate with the state reps and their senators and everything. In fact, Union of Minority Neighborhoods is working on a bill that would do exactly that. So that's one way to do it. Getting it federally is going to be much more difficult because we have a Republican Senate and we have a Republican president. So it's just not going to happen there right now. But state by state, it might happen. In terms of individual reparations, I think there are two ways to do it. One is through the government, increasing SNAP programs, making sure nobody's evicted. I mean, there are all sorts of things that come out of this. But the other way is to support Black organizations. Foundations don't support Black organizations, Black-run organizations. The guys who do the work, who do it on spit and energy, you have to support them. And supporting a white organization that works in a Black neighborhood is just not as good as supporting a Black organization that works in a Black neighborhood, or supporting a Latino organization that works in a Spanish-speaking neighborhood. It just is not as effective because these white organizations, even if they hire Black people, are not on the ground. They don't know what's happening there. They hire Black people, they may not even be from the neighborhoods they're working in. So reparations in that sense is good. And then when we get rid of the Republicans, we can talk seriously about federal reparations. I'm finished.
So it's saying that as an individual, not as part of an organization.
Karen had a follow-up question to that, Sue, I believe. How do we do that? How do we try to get something on the ballot?
Oh, well, you work with organizations that are doing things like that. So for instance, let's say well, with the UMN bill, it's the bill that UMN is going to be advocating for. It's really a huge chunk of the state budgets that's coming down from the federal government to be used for a variety of things that will support and help the Black community, okay? But you could choose something. I mean, if you think right now the most terrible thing are the cops, that's a huge system to deal with. Okay, so get rid of the police unions, replace them, make people resign, make sure they're not trained as paramilitary organizations, get rid of their damn guns. I mean, there are all sorts of things, but you have to start with what's most reasonable. You're not going to get rid of the union. You're not going to get rid of the guns. Maybe you can convince your local cops to have a different kind of training, to integrate their forces more, that kind of thing. One of the big things that the Black chiefs of police have been saying is, they don't have much power because the police unions scare them. So if policing is the thing that you want to deal with first, then you just sit down and you think about all the things I want to change about policing. You pick something that you think is winnable and you start working with people. You call up your state reps, your city council people, you talk to the mayor, you get whatever it is, whatever the setup is. Boston City Council doesn't do much, but they can do resolutions. And then if the mayor, who says he wants to make Boston the first city in Black equity in the country, then he's going to listen to you about that. So there are so many things that impact equity and equality in the Black community. You have a panoply to choose from. But of course, helping to get the money and giving to organizations that work on getting the money for the Black community are probably the best way to go about it. Was that clear?
I think it was.
Okay.
For me, it was.
It was. And last thing too is people power. So some folks were talking in chat like property taxes and things of that sort. If you want to see something change in your community, on your street, for first thing, you can register as a street association, a neighborhood association, or block, or anything like that. And the numbers on that street will influence how your reps, whether they're local, state, will vote, will concede, because if there's strength in numbers, if they want to be reelected, what you need to do is let them know, hey, 100 people feel like this is important. We're all willing to sit down and take up all your office hours and talk about this. That will get their attention. And it's just making movements like that where you build solidarity with your community, with the people close to you who all have common interests. And then you use that as your bully pulpit to get your rep, senators, council people, to lean into the direction of what's important for your community coming directly from its constituents.
Look at what Akriti said. It's very important. Make sure who controls it. Who controls the bill, the money, the strings, you know, it may be for one thing and then 3/4 of it goes to some organization that isn't really going to help you do it.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about that. But she also notes that this is the right time to ask for money, which was what I was saying. Hi, Akriti.
We have about 9 minutes left, and I know we haven't answered everybody's questions. I just want to make everyone aware, in case people have not seen everything in the chat, I will make a recording of this available tomorrow, as well as the transcript. So you will have a copy of the chat in case you have missed anything. If you would like to volunteer, if you would like to help in any way, go to theblacproject.com. You know, contact us there. You can donate, you can sign up to volunteer, you can do all of those things. And I wanted to say that before I get into this next question. What was it? Let's see. There are a lot of white people at protests raising their fists and using images of the Black Power fist on their signs. Is this cultural appropriation that's offensive, or is it a valid display of solidarity? I think if you're using it properly, if you're standing in solidarity with your Black community, I feel like it is an appropriate use. I don't know if anybody disagrees with me, but I think if that is the environment that you're using it in and you're genuine about your usage, I think that is okay. Is there anybody who disagrees with that on the panel?
I don't disagree with that. I feel like symbolism and placement is really important. I think that you hit the nail on the head, Rochelle, by saying, hey, if you're doing it in this space in solidarity with these people, and when in doubt about appropriation, ask somebody from that culture, not just your friend, but somebody of that culture who will be honest and not just your friend. Your friends will give you those passive, resounding okays because they may personally be okay with it because they personally know you. But just think, even though we shouldn't care what people think, we all have a chance to make a first impression or a lasting image or a horrible meme. And you don't want to be that meme. Don't be that person who appropriates and becomes a horrible meme that creates this kind of contradiction and contrast where people are debating what's right or wrong over your choice without just asking someone for advice. Is this a good look? Is this appropriate? The fact that somebody even took the time to ask if something like that is appropriation is a sign in the right direction.
All right, and a follow up to that, are there certain protest chants that white people should not participate in? Like what? Like what? I want to know, like what? Like saying, I can't breathe. I feel like, again, if it's in solidarity, if it's not being used as a joke, as I know some people are really shitty people and are using it as a joke, then it's fine. But again, like Matt said, if you're in doubt, ask your Black friend. You know, as long as you're genuine about it and you want to do some good in the world, yup, Karen, yup. You know, I feel like as long as the usage is appropriate, then you're okay. Are there any more last minute questions that we can answer with our last 5 minutes? Healthcare, okay. So as far as equality in healthcare, and I don't really have an answer to that. I feel like a lot of the research that happens is geared towards white people, and there's not a lot of research geared towards curing Black people. And until there is, there's always going to be a disparity. I don't really know what action you can take there. I'm not immersed in that field, but I do know there's not a lot of research, and I personally try to participate in any research study that I can because of it. Like, I'm personally scared to have kids because I don't want to die. And a lot of Black women died during childbirth, and it's messed up. And if we can get some research as to why, instead of wasting dollars on other nonsensical medical research, I think we would be in a better position. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think while we're researching those things for the Black community, that it's also important to monitor our coworkers in the health profession to make sure that they are effectively and that they are treating Black people in the correct way. There are studies that have been done that show that Black people are given less prescriptions and pain medication because doctors just automatically assume that they can take it because we've already taken so much. So it is super important to make sure that we help to erase the negative connotation Black people have towards going to the doctor because they feel like they are not going to be treated fairly or treated correctly at all.
Agreed. Just talk to us nice. Marissa says, I would love to volunteer, but I want to be respectful and not be the white savior. Are there groups I should not look to volunteer with as a white ally? Are there groups I should not look to volunteer with as a white ally? Yeah, but I think the list is quite extensive. So maybe that's something we can follow up with after. And if anybody, I'm going to try to address all of these questions, and for people who require lists and things like that, I'm going to try to put it in a newsletter and send it out. So if you want to receive all of that information, just drop your email. You can drop it directly to me and I'll put you on the list and you can get all of that information. In the meantime, is there any groups that are not about it that the panel may know of that, you know, they should not look to volunteer with as a white ally, that you know off the top of your heads?
No, I don't know of any group. I think the question should be like, what local organization should I volunteer with, as opposed to like what I shouldn't, because you know, what about a certain organization would deter you from volunteering with them, unless, you know, there was some controversy around the organization. So I think maybe in the newsletter, if we could like compile a list of local organizations outside of the BLAC project, because that's my first choice, to volunteer with, that would be really helpful. And then everybody can individually kind of look into those things and see which ones they identify with the most, which ones are they the most passionate about, so that your volunteer experience is the most genuine, because you identify with it on several levels.
Sure, we can make sure we do that. And somebody
I something about volunteerism.
Go ahead.
I say this with all due respect. Don't volunteer just to get rid of the guilt. Volunteer to make an impact, to be influential, to help a cause continue past that feeling, right? Like we oftentimes we'll do something because it feels good in the moment, and then we get too busy for it, and then it falls to the wayside and we forget all about it, right? Like that cause isn't important anymore, or I felt good, I don't feel guilty anymore, so I can let that go. Volunteer because it's the right thing to do, because you have capacity to do it, and you're well, not just past the well intention, the good intention. We need more than just good intentions, because some organizations actually run on volunteers, and it's really difficult. I've worked for several organizations that are volunteer based, and it's really hard to tell a group or a program or a bunch of non-privileged kids that because there's a lack of volunteers showing up, the things they learning or getting accustomed to being a part of will no longer be happening. So I just say, give your time, your energy, and your resource, but don't just do it for a feel-good moment. Like really buy into that, because there are people who might lean on that for continuation, for survival. And yeah, that's all I want to say about that.
Thank you. So we're over time. I just want to reiterate, nobody's personal information will be shared when we put out the transcript. We will redact everybody's personal information. It will just be first names. So if you have your first and your last name will be taken off. Emails will be taken off, all of that. If you need resources, blacproject.com, unionofminorityneighborhoods.org, and feel free to sign up to volunteer with us because we need it. And thank you all for coming. If you need any other resources, feel free to email us, contact us on Instagram, so on and so forth. Thank you all for being wonderful tonight, and enjoy your night. Thank you.